Good day, my friends. I am the Synodic Scribe, and I'm taking a break from my usual Final Fantasy XIV lore content to gush about Elden Ring for a bit and explain the reason why I love this game's narrative. Today we'll be discussing one of, if not the biggest secret to From Software's literary success. As a lore channel, I adore a tall tale, and while I may not be Vati Vidya, I've enjoyed the Soulsborne games for many years now. Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 through 3, Bloodborne, etc. These games, while challenging and frustrating at times, are extremely memorable because of these factors. But that frustration doesn't just come from getting ganked by a mob or one-shot by a boss's second phase. It also comes from its storytelling and how it forces you to think. Today, let's come together to address the storytelling methods of Elden Ring and how not knowing is a bigger chunk of the fun than most people understand. Before we start, this game is so huge that I've not finished it yet, so if you're worried about spoilers, don't be, because at most I'll only be discussing things that are abstract or at the very beginning of this massive world, and honestly, that's all I need. So, sit back, relax, enjoy some of the art drawn by my channel artist Caddy, and let us begin by addressing the allure and fear of the unknown. Not knowing something makes people anxious. That sounds like an obvious sentence, but most people underestimate just how mentally stimulating that anxiety can truly be. Take a horror movie or game, for example. The more terrifying ones are usually the environments or creatures that the director doesn't allow you to see, or at least doesn't let you get a good look at. Not knowing what kind of monster is chasing you fills you with more dread than if you'd already seen it. But why is that? And the answer is found within our own imagination. Our brains are an amazing thing. They analyze and process data in ways that a computer could only dream of, with many of our brain's routines being subconscious. But that's the point. It needs data to contextualize not only your surroundings, but you as well. Even without any way to gain the information you desire, your mind still desires it. It wants to know for the sake of knowing, which is where creativity and imagination becomes your greatest friend and your most dangerous enemy. Looping back to the horror monster example, if you're being chased by something as simple as a dog, but you don't know it's a dog, your mind can easily reshape it into something so much more large, dangerous, and aggressive than what it actually is. This happens impulsively. Your mind wants that information regardless of your desire to acquire it. So, if you don't have any data to put in, it will create its own. And usually, the fantasy your mind forges is so much more exaggerated than reality. And From Software knows this. The true secret to Elden Ring's writing, or rather the successful writing of the Soulsborne games in general, is the exploitation of your own curiosity and desire to acquire that missing data. In Elden Ring's open world, there are many different directions you can go and destinations to visit, places you didn't even know existed until you stumbled onto them. This anxious feeling of the unknown inspires people to be adventurous and find out what's around the next corner. Because even if they don't find anything, they now know that for certain there is nothing there, and are simply satisfied with that information on some level. With every secret found, item collected, and path explored, your mind is creating a book filled to the brim with information on this game and everything in it. A book with blank pages that you instinctively desire to fill. It stokes that fire in you to keep going, regardless of what might be waiting for you on the other side of that fog gate. You know whatever it is will be dangerous. How dangerous? Well, time to cross that threshold and acquire that information. It's the reason you desire to acquire every item you see hanging off of a ledge in the distance, even if it turns out to be useless. It's the reason you challenge bosses in funny ways, to see what you can get away with. It's even the reason why you attack a wall, even though one message says it's an illusion and another person says that person is a liar. You hit it anyways because why not? You need to know for yourself. Experiencing these things on your own with no hand-holding or guide telling you what to do makes every experience that much more memorable because your brain was forced to think and acquire that information on its own. If you play through an entire game with a guide telling you what to do or where to go, you're not forced to think critically, and it'll never be as stimulating because instead of acquiring that knowledge, you allowed something else to give that data to you. Not that I'm saying guides aren't necessary sometimes. I mean, good lord FromSoft, how was I supposed to know to go back to a jar several times to yield different dialogue options when most NPCs repeat their two favorite sentences ad nauseum? But I digress. This desire to explore is one of the major reasons behind Elden Ring's success when compared to most modern games. That's the problem that a lot of open world games suffer from these days. They're so terrified that you'll fail to figure out where to go or what to do that you'll be given dozens of quest markers complete with an essay explaining what you need to do when you get there. Sometimes the NPCs or your own character will mumble about what they need to do when they get there, taking away that sense of adventure as the unknown is not so unknown anymore. These games, while often well-made and beautiful to look at, aren't very memorable because of their writing choices. Without the need to think or solve problems on your own, your brain kinda just goes on autopilot, and everything that's happening becomes a big blur. For example, there are puzzles in the dozens of re-releases of Skyrim, but no one really talks about them because of how simple or easy they are. Sure, it's a puzzle, but when the answer is obvious, your mind isn't really engaged. On the other hand, there are moments in Dark Souls 1 that people still happily talk about to this very day because of the problem it placed in front of them and the need to find a workaround. Friggin' Silver Knight Archers of Anor Londo. But through all the anxiety and frustration, you find satisfaction when you finally overcome those obstacles. A satisfaction that Skyrim's poor excuse for puzzles could never match. And that brings us all the way back to the literary choices made in Elden Ring. Just like how the world invites you to explore and learn everything at your own pace, the writing is done in the same way. Like life, not every NPC's position or morals are on full display. Is this person lying to me or being honest? What are their end goals? Should I help them or ignore them? Should I dunk on that white-masked jerk at the start of the game? These questions about the characters and world inspire you to learn more. What were the lands between like before the shattering? And what choices should I make toward the end of the game? The simple answer is, you don't know. And sometimes, you never will. That anxious thought of not knowing whether or not you made the right choice will force you to think about Elden Ring more than most other games. Because in most games, the characters are either obviously good or obviously evil. Again, you don't really need to think too hard in those cases. But Elden Ring will make you ask yourself, was there nothing else I could have done? Did I miss something? Like the cliffhanger to a good book or show, Elden Ring will not give you these answers on its own. And thus you might think about these things even after you turn off your console or computer, if only for a moment. This is the reason some people still argue about which ending to Dark Souls 1 is the true or better ending. Because all you're ever allowed to see is the choice you made. You're never shown the results or consequences of that choice. The easy answer would be to say that Dark Souls 2 is the consequence, but it's hardly that simple. Because no matter what you pick, Dark Souls 2 will always happen. Begging the question of what events occurred between the end of Dark Souls 1 to the beginning of Dark Souls 2. Questions you'll never have an answer for. But just because you don't know doesn't mean that's a bad thing. Like I've already repeated incessantly throughout this video, not knowing something will naturally inspire that spark of adventure in yourself. It will encourage you to try things you'd normally not do, or go to places you've not seen. This is a flame that only games like Elden Ring can ignite, because it doesn't always show you where to go or what results will come from your choices. The writing of this game purposely keeps you on the edge of your seat, and most people love it for that. And that's not even getting into the game's difficulty and breathtaking visuals. Like I said at the start, this was me kinda gushing about the brilliant choices for the game's narrative and design because of how much I've loved the game so far. What an absolute treat it must have been to create this world and the plethora of characters there within. But to stop myself from unnecessarily repeating myself, I'll end the video here. If you're already a fan of my channel, I thank you for bearing with me and allowing me the chance to get this off my chest before I return to my usual content. If you're new to my channel, welcome! As stated at the start, I am a lore channel that currently specializes in Final Fantasy XIV content. So, if you're interested in getting new lore content every week, consider subscribing. It's only a singular button click for you, but means the entire world to me and inspires me to work even harder. So, until next we meet, stay safe, my friends.